Inside one of the quiet compounds of the Diocese of KASESE sits a priest whose journey mirrors the growth of the Catholic Church in the Rwenzori region. Reverend Father 𝐄𝐗𝐏𝐄𝐃 Aboki has served as a parish priest, vicar general, pastoral coordinator, chancellor, and peace mobilizer for decades. But long before the titles and responsibilities, his calling began in a deeply Catholic family near Uganda's border with Congo.
My father and my mother were the first catechumens who moved from Nyaruguru to Senyi because they had had an accident. So because of that historical faith of my mother, of my parents, and because some of the priests were visiting us, you see, I come from near the border, and our home is just near the road. So when the priests would go to the mountains, they would leave their cars at home. And then I would see them dressed very well. Some of them were the Bazungus. Then they would make us kneel down and we pray. So right from P5, I had an inspiration of becoming like them, becoming a priest.
His seminary journey stretched throughout difficult political times under Idi Amin, Obote II, and the Okello regime. Despite the hardships and long journeys by train from KASESE to Katigondo Seminary, Father Kisembo says he never once regretted becoming a priest.
I never had a challenge over my priesthood trying to think that I wish I did not become one. Actually, I have never regretted because my seminary life was smooth. There was no receipt in my time for classes. My father would not fail to pay school fees.
In 1989, while attending a meeting in Fort Portal, Father Kisembo received shocking news. KASESE had officially become a diocese separated from the then vast Fort Portal diocese. At first, he thought it was an April Fool's joke.
And so, because of those two things, the language, the distance from here to Fort Portal, and the historical background between Batoro and Bakonzo, sort of conflicts, I think it led our elders, our superiors to say, let us have a separate diocese.
Only 5 years into priesthood, Father Kisembo was entrusted with organizing the ordination ceremony of the first bishop of KASESE Diocese, Bishop 𝐄𝐗𝐏𝐄𝐃. The event attracted national leaders including President Yoweri Museveni and Emmanuel Cardinal Nsubuga. But perhaps the defining moment of his ministry came in 1993 when KASESE hosted Pope John Paul II. At the time, several regions competed to host the Pontiff's Western Uganda visit. Parliament eventually selected KASESE.
Then they said, Expedito, you are now the chairperson of the Pope's visit. I said, well, I can do it.
As chairperson of the organizing committee, Father Kisembo coordinated church leaders, government officials, and volunteers from across Western Uganda. Committees handled everything from finance and protocol to catering, choirs, and security. Roads were opened, infrastructure improved, and the entire region mobilized for the historic visit.
There was no function like collecting money for eating, no. There was no much feeding. Even the Pope himself had said, I'll come from the Nucio's place when I have eaten. So prepare for me a soda and biscuits.
On the morning of the visit, thousands descended from the Rwenzori mountains on foot to witness the Pope. Security remained tight due to ADF insurgency threats, with helicopters hovering overhead during Mass. Father Kisembo says one unforgettable moment came when Pope John Paul II greeted the congregation in Lukonzo.
And then when he said, Obuho Rubieni, you can imagine how Mukonzo felt.
As Vicar General, Father Kisembo personally welcomed the Pope at KASESE airstrip. He recalls a brief but memorable exchange.
When the bishop introduced me, he says, oh, this is my Vicar General. Then the Pope said, oh, he's a young man, a young Vicar General. I said, yes, Your Holiness. The dice is also young, and then we laughed. Have you ever laughed with the Pope, you?
For Father Kisembo, the Pope's visit left more than memories. He says it strengthened unity among religious groups, improved cooperation with government, and softened long-standing regional tensions,
softened the hearts of the clergy of Kabale. Secondly, it brought the unity of this archdiocese because we worked together in preparation for him. Then secondly, it improved the relationship between the Catholics and other faiths because we worked together in collecting some funds, in preparing, in hosting, in giving free hotels.
Today, decades later, Father Kisembo remains active in peace building through the Interfaith Council of KASESE, helping mediate conflicts linked to insurgency and tribal tensions across the Rwenzori region. Now 72, the veteran priest spends part of his time farming coffee, maize, pigs, and turkeys, while continuing to mentor younger clergy. From helping establish the Diocese of KASESE to organizing the visit of a pope who would later become a saint, Reverend Father Expirito Kisembo's story is deeply woven into the spiritual and historical identity of the Rwenzori region. Walter 𝐻𝐒𝐄𝐏𝐄𝐃, NTV.